Could you start by telling me where you were born?
I was born in England, 1911, Portsmouth. And came out to here when I was in 1920.
To Creston?
Yeah.
Were your parents?
Well, actually came to Canyon out here, which was then named Canyon City. And we lived with my sister until about October, and then we came into Creston and bought a little place and lived. They had an acre of land, small farm and that. I went to school in Creston, went to school in Canyon actually, and then finished up my schooling in Creston. We didn't have any riches or anything like that, so as soon as I got through entrance, I got out and started to work. And one of my first jobs was working for the CPR as a messenger boy. And 2 or 3 years, then come the Depression time. I worked up to assistant agent. Then came the Depression in the early 30s, and of course the seniority was just about nil, and I was laid off. There was no work. And then one day, it was way up in 1928, it was my first fire. We went out to West Creston to the old schoolhouse there, and that was the main center of the disposition of the men and the work. The fire had come in from Corn Creek, and it was spreading, threatening the houses on the west side towards Summit Creek. And I got a long weekend there, and I was on loan from the CPR for, I think it was Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and I got back Monday. And that's where I met the new ranger. That's a long time ago. I had the honor to give that man a eulogy just a week or so ago, Jim McDonald. And I thought he was quite a man, which he was. Then in the early 30s, when the CPR, the Depression hit anyhow, and I took any job I could. And one of the jobs was out here in the old Alexander limit between here and the border. And there was a fire there, so I got to work on that. I think that was for 2 bits an hour. I think they did charge $1 a day for meals too. Anyhow, I was working hard there and got to be, I was really happy. I'd worked almost a day there, and the word come along the line for me to get back in and see the boss, and I figured I was fired. But he'd heard I'd worked for the CPR, and he needed a pencil pusher, and I was timekeeper right there. So that's got me started. I worked with him. I guess I was satisfactory. I worked with him, and from the timekeeper, I took on, I guess he would be training me in a smoke chaser, lightning strikes, a pump operator, and finally worked up to dispatcher in the office. And then from there got up to assistant ranger. I put in a year in the meantime, though, at CM&S with Herb Cooling, and we worked up there in Kimberley. But when I got to be assistant ranger, I stayed with it. That was only summer months and that, but it kept us eating. So then one day I had a chance to get on permanent. That was in January, and been working there till I retired. Not there, but working for the Forest Service. But like I said, I got on permanent with Jim McDonald, and from there I became a scaler, first aid man, and he had a good system. I think he was the start of in the early days of the pre-organization that we had right up till I retired. I don't know what they've got now. I think it's all changed. But from there, we had some fine fires. I missed the one that wiped out Duck Creek, because I was sent up to Prince George, and went into the office there in the Prince George office. Worked there 2 or 3 years, and with the help of a lot of the senior men up there, I managed to make the ranger school and passed. And then from there I was sent back to Creston and spent the rest of my, until retirement, right here, which was unusual because usually at 5 years or so you get kicked onto somewhere else. I either had things in such a mess that they couldn't move me, or else I was doing a good job on the other. So,
did you want to move to other ranger districts to have more variety, or were you happy to stay here?
I was happy to stay here. I did not want to be a boat ranger.
Where would you be a boat ranger?
At the coast.
Oh, at the coast.
Vancouver, Rupert. Didn't want that. I don't like deep water. I don't even like Kootenay Lake. Fishing from the shore is fine, but not to get out on it. So Prince George was a great place. There was still a lot of Army and Air Force up there.
What years were you in Prince George? After
the
Second War?
1945 until about 50, I think it was.
When did you attend Ranger School?
That'd be around 1945 in there, in the summer.
Were you in the first class?
No, second.
The second.
Yeah. Herb Cooling was in the first class.
Right. Les Stillwell? He was one of the...
I believe he was one of the first ones, too.
But Joe Killow would have been in your class. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Of course, there was a lot from all the other ranger districts, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's a smoke chaser?
A reported lightning strike. Sometimes they flare up. The lookout man spots them and gives you the bearing, and then you go out to find it. They don't always send up puffs of smoke so you can find them easy. You go out there and you know it's an active fire because it's been seen several times, several hours possibly, and you know it's not going to go out by itself, so you go out there and you smell it, you try and hear it. Some fires you walk within 100 yards of them and you don't know they're there. And you don't, when you're searching, you don't run in around in circles. Otherwise you'd pick it up with a wind drift. We've had fires where the actual fire was way up the mountain, but the smoke from it was caught in a downdraft and come down a draw and then showed up a third of a mile away in a real plume, and that threw us a couple of times. Then we made another trip up the mountain. After we had a look at it, we went back to the creek and looked up. And you know, that we followed that thing up that draw and then found this old lightning struck cedar. And there was 2 befores, or the equivalent of them, stuck in the ground, and it would have been a dangerous place to have been, you know, those big slivers of wood flying through the air. Some of them we couldn't pull out of the ground.
Because of the force of the
lightning strike blowing the tree apart.
Mm-hmm. How many of you would there be on one of these crews?
2 men.
What kind of equipment would you carry?
We'd carry iron rations. That's a compact meal for a day. 3 meals, let's put it that way. Breakfast, dinner, and supper. One man would take an axe or a Pulaski and a shovel. That was the basic on the very small ones. But usually we were scouting. If it was a small fire, we'd put it out. If we couldn't put it out, one of us would come out and take a crew in. There was no radios in the early days. You had to go out. But then we were tough in the end. Kind of burns my butt when I look at these mountains, and backpacked up most of them, and now I go up a little hill and I puff something terrible. That's, however.
So just the 2 of you would be out walking?
Oh yeah. We'd be driven to the nearest road close as they could get to the fire, and then we'd walk and sniff and look, listen, and finally we'd find them. I don't think we ever missed one, but sometimes it took a couple of days and we ran out of grub for sure, but we made it. There was kind of a competitive spirit about it all. You had to do better than the other smoke chasers.
How many crews of 2 would there be, like yourself?
Well, if there was no set number. If there was we've had a little 20-minute storm here that set 31 fires. As many as it was needed. It couldn't be reached by road. We put on smoke chasers or lightning patrol. If there was a big storm gone over an area and there was no active smoke seen, just in case there was one laying down in the duff somewhere waiting to spring up when a wind or a hot sun hit it, why, we'd make patrols in that area and really go it over careful. And occasionally we'd run into a patch of huckleberries too. But the smokes came first.
Did you have established trails that you used?
Yeah, usually those trails were, well, not in every case, but usually we followed a trail where we could look into the suspect area. Yeah. Like along the Iron Range, which is a long mountain out of Kitchener. Now there's roads all over it. One of our chief foresters had the idea of skyline roads, ridgetop roads, and that was a fine idea. They were helpful, but like I say, in the 20s, the odd trail, and the rest of the time you worked your way through the brush.
You worked for Kaminko with Herb Cooling for a while?
Yeah, we put in a couple of winters up there.
So in the summer you'd worked for the Forest Service?
Well, no, I went through one summer up there. They didn't have a job.
Working underground?
Nope, we were working in the concentrator. I was sure glad to get out of there. Yeah, you couldn't, that fine lead zinc dust get into your pores. You couldn't wash it off, it just ground in there. Stayed for, after I got out, it was a year and a half before my hands and wrists and that, the pores cleaned up all that time. And not good for you.
Working seasonally, you'd have always had to look out for something that you could do in the winter then?
Yeah, worked it, anything we could. And we used to go out and get our own wood. We'd work in stores. I even worked in the post office for a while, sorting mail and carrying the mail up from the trains, things like that. One time after I got married, I had 3 jobs every day. One was the CPR, stacking, loading up fruit for the LC local shipments of strawberries, cherries, and that stuff. I worked in the mercantile, and I worked in the Farmers Institute. There I would take 20 sacks of feed and shovel them all together with the addition of linseed oil, bone meal. We mixed up everything there by hand, and I got 50 cents a ton for dumping the sacks, mixing them all up, and reloading the sacks and labeling them. But we're glad to get that 4 bits. Them days it bought a lot of grub. Oh yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
The Forest Service wasn't expanding during the 30s, was it?
Goodness no, there was a time there that we worked for our board. Oh yeah, one summer there we were conscripted to fight fire, and you got your meals out of it. Now, I don't remember exactly, but they didn't pay no 2 bits an hour. It was tough. You dodged. Otherwise, you went to work. Some of them went to work just to get food. Most of them, there was a lot of them there. Even for 2 bits an hour, they'd start fires. And my other partner there, he and I were on several stakeouts waiting for somebody. We'd follow them through the brush. wait for them to start a fire, but we never caught any. But we had a lot of timber around here, and there's none of this clear-cut clearings like we have now.
And all this time through the 30s, you were working with Jim McDonald.
Yeah, but it's seasonal stuff, like in the summertime. And then I would scale in the wintertime, scaling logs up Hawkins Creek and stuff like that. But I didn't have to do that once he found a place for a permanent assistant ranger. Yeah, he did a lot of things. I learned how to put a phone line up to the lookouts, learned how to use radios and different kinds of firefighting machinery like pumps. Then chainsaws came into it. It was never a monotonous job.
Where were the lookouts around Creston?
There's one up here on Thompson Lookout, right back a canyon. And there was a trail up there. I got the first car up to the lookout, or right close to the lookout, by using existing logging roads. We even put in a couple of miles of clearing to get up there. And then, of course, once that started, the trail was widened out, and in a lot of places it was widened out for car travel instead of just pack horse. First it was pack horse only, going up there, her backpacking. She was tough.
What kind of structure was the Thompson Lookout?
This is something I've been trying to catch up on the pictures of those. There were 7 different lookouts up there, including the one that's there now.
What was the first one?
The first one was in a clearing right on the tip top. It was 4 trees, the platform on top, a ladder going up, and a wall on one side so the lookout man wouldn't fall off of it. He had a bench up there and a telephone. No, pardon me. The telephone was down below in the lookout man's tent. And he would spot a fire and tell you where it was, and then run down and get on the phone and phone in.
Did he have a fire finder or alidade of some kind?
Not in them days. He just had the compass and field glasses. And then they put up another one. That was I wish I could locate the rest of those pictures, but would they be any good to you?
Sure. Oh yes.
What I've got? Okay. In fact, the locals from Canyon, and Creston, used to go up there and pick and then come down. I'll dig up these photos for you from what I can. I have one painting from watercolor. I'll take a picture of that. So I'll get those photos to you. I wish I had the others. I'd like to had the set. I had they strung a wire from the water hole down on the other side and I have no way of telling how long it was. I'd say it was a quarter of a mile. Heavy wire, and they winched it up tight, and then they had a rope and a bucket that would go down to the water hole, flip on its side, scoop full of water, and then it cranked slowly up the hill. I haven't got a picture of that. I couldn't afford a camera in those days, but I had a crew of they were the lads that the Forest Service made work for. Now, you might have that name on your, I can't think of it, but we had 6 up there, young fellers about 14, 15, 16, and the ranger put me in charge of those guys, and we put in the last graded mile and a half of pack trail up to the lookout, because there was stuff going to be horse packed up there. So we put that in. We camped on the other side down by the water hole, and every day we'd have this 20-minute climb back up to the top. It was terrible. And then they got what they called a trail kit, and it was a very narrow gauge bulldozer. And they wiped out this is news to you, is it?
A trail kit.
Kitten, yeah. Instead of a caterpillar, it was a kitten. Just so big with a blade on it, and they wiped out about a 2.5, 3 foot tread in most places. And of course, a pack horse could use that then. And it went straight up in most cases, but when you got near the top wire, we switched back, and that's where I had the crew working. The crew quit on me one day, and pardon me a second, on account of a bear on the trail up ahead. It was rolling rocks over looking for ants. So after I got him cooled down, that started me on my carving, and I've been carving ever since. There's that little bear rolling a rock. But it was nice to be able to sit there in the shade.
That's wonderful, that little carving of the bear.
Yeah. Rolling a rock.
And were the rocks falling on you as they were rolling them, or just?
No, he was just up on the side hill there, and there was too much brush to roll very far. But he was sure looking out for ants. But there's a lot of bear up there. But after I got the kids calmed down, they were all right. Yeah. Enough of them there with grub hose and shovels to chase that bear clean out of the country.
But they must have soon replaced the platform with a more permanent structure on.
That's right. They got another 4 trees and another 4 trees, because the first ones up there were poles. They didn't have anything to lift them up with, and they were using light stuff. And then they put one up there with 4 tree trunks with a winding staircase around it, and pulled a house, or pre-built a house, and pulled it up in the center of the 4 poles, or 4 uprights, and they bolted it in there. They put guy wires and everything else, and finally they wound up with a square living quarters, and made out of concrete. That's when they got the road up there, and they could haul that stuff up. Concrete, and put in a radio, and tower, and a firefinder up on top, and glassed in. It was cold in the winter. Was left open so that anybody that needed to could get in there and have shelter, but it soon got vandalized so badly that we had to lock it up, shutter all the windows and all that sort of stuff. It's too bad people are that way.
Did it have a Bennett firefinder in the...
Yep.
Did you know Bennett when he was up in this area?
Yeah, I think I met him with Jim McDonald one time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bennett. Did he not devise a small portable pump?
And also hose fittings.
The instantaneous. Yeah. Yeah, I met him. I've used his pump too, although it was a treasure. Jim McDonald had one here. Had one, or maybe it was the only one he made, but it worked. Yeah, I met a lot of nice people in my stay with the Forest Service. They were good to me.
Where did Jim McDonald come from?
He came from Fernie. He was born in Fernie, but he came from the Flathead country and in around Corbin where the mines are, Crow's Nest Pass in there. And he's quite a man. He had quite an organized mind, and when he started to build something, he would sketch it out on paper, and as he progressed through the plan, he'd make side notes with the equipment, the bolts, the nails, and everything he needed as he progressed. And when he totted them all up and getting allotment for it, why, like a 100-foot radio pole, or if he had $100 allotment, and they put in a 4-car garage, complete with shingles and paint job, concrete floor. We made the shingles, and we cut the rafters, and we scrounged some boards from some old camp buildings, and laid our shakes on top of that. Main thing was the paint and the cement and the nails. Oh, it was really something to work for him. He was a scrounger par excellence. Yeah. Whenever I was stuck, I scratch my head and say, how would Jim do this? I get the answer from some previous experiences. He never let me down. It's very, he always seemed to have the answer. I used him just about all my life after I got to be ranger as a pattern, if you can understand. So.
Were there some other lookouts that you serviced out of Creston?
Towards the last, yes, we serviced the lookout here between Cullis Creek and McGregor, that's it. Yeah, and there was a road up to that. That was a hairy one. The switchbacks were so, the side hill was so steep that the switchbacks you had to cut and back up and then make your turn. Yeah, first time I went up, I did not like it at all. And coming down, it was just as bad. The country was so rough that Well, one lookout man was in a hurry to get home, and it took him an hour and a half to walk from the top down into the lake, and I think he was running most of the way. Wife was sick, and he had to get home, and we were sending up another relief man. Yeah.
Did you ever work as a lookout man?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, at Thompson?
No, at the one to the east here. Later lookout they put up, 229. It was right on the border.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Oh boy.
In the 30s?
No, it was after I was ranger. I let the lookout man go to a wedding in Saskatchewan, and somebody complained. I talked it over with the district forest, and I said, how about give me a couple of days up there? He said yes, and I said, I'm on my way. Yeah, didn't get any fires though.
A break from the office.
Oh yeah, sure. Everything was running good then. Yeah.
So that was actually on the boundary swath, the tower, right on the.
Well, you could toss a rock to the boundary. Mm-hmm. It was within maybe 70 yards of the boundary monument on the top.
So did you survey a lot of the United States from there?
Yeah, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, was, my Scotch nature says, here we are, working for nothing. We're reporting all these fires, and it's for the States. But they used an old CPR lookout up to the time they got that one built. A CPR's logging railroad all through the Hawkins Creek Valley and drainages. And they had a lookout there in the spring. Ryan Mountain.
The CPR had a lookout of its own?
Yeah, they had a network of railroads up there. They were logging up there up till about, yeah, 1920, somewhere in there. Because I know they had rails in there when we first went to a fire down by the border at the head end of Freeman Creek. And that fire took off, and they chased it across the line, and it took off and went across the ridge into below Mall Pass, below Tree Creek, and the river itself goes on through Libby. Hell, it'd be getting old. Can't remember the name of that creek now, or that river. But they had a big camp there, a mile or two into the States. They had Negroes, they had mules, they had generators for electric lights, and they had a real camp up there, hundreds of men. And like I say, they chased it across into Canada, and we had to go after it. And when it blew, it went right over into the next drainage. I'm sorry I can't pick up the name of that. I know we traveled pretty near a full day to make a new camp on the other drainage.
The Americans must have reported fires in Canada.
Yeah, we
well.
had a mutual system. It was very good. They would come into Canada and fight a fire, and if locals showed up, they'd hire them. They weren't exclusive or anything. boys used to like the wages the Americans paid, believe me. But we would report and make the initial attack whenever we could. Oh, there was great cooperation. They were a good bunch. Yeah. I got to know most of the rangers that was at Bonner's Ferry in that country. Every time we had a ranger meeting, they delegated me to guide these guys around. And, well, they'd invite the Americans too, local ones. And I would take great delight in feeding them our rye and stuff like that. They were known to drink once in a while.
What would you show them? The logging operations?
The logging operations, we had local attractions too, and not necessarily Forest Service, but like the glass house. Morbid. Yeah. We almost got they had never had any ranger meetings like we threw. They'd get together, strictly business, and as soon as it was over, they're all gone. But we would work all day, and then at night there was entertainment, like suppers and stuff like that.
What was the purpose of the ranger meetings?
Cooperation. Oh, the ranger meeting for the Canadians?
Yes.
Oh. Ideas, new techniques, stuff like that. And new equipment.
How often were they held?
Sometimes they were held once a year. All the rangers and the technical staff from Nelson would be there. All the rangers' head management men would be there. Yeah, they were good meetings, most of them. Yeah.
Were they always held in Nelson?
Yep. Occasionally we'd go out to look at a pulp mill, say in Castlegar, or an operation that was using when those things that come out, they would cut the tree off at the bottom like with a large pair of shears, and then strip all the branches on the way up. Made a field trip for that, and or take a look at bad erosion areas. These are things that come up to the surface of my so-called mind. It was quite informative.
The meetings with the Americans were local, Creston meetings? Or were they...
We had a lot of meetings with the Americans, or we'd go down there. But they were always invited to the ranger meetings.
Mm-hmm. To these annual gatherings.
Mm-hmm. They were 3-4 days long. And of course it didn't cost them anything.
I would like to have some notion of what the forest industry was like here from your perspective.
Well, when I started, that would be in the late 40s. 50. Not 50s, 40 or 50. There was close to 100, believe it or not, 100 little operators, and 2 or 3 large outfits. And we used to inspect them every chance we got. That would average out to 3 or 4 a year. Sometimes there would be no operation if the snow was too deep or the mud was too slippery. Why, those small ones wouldn't be operating. But included in that would be a lot of post sales, kind of clean up and salvaging posts or dead stuff, burnt stuff, I mean.
So by little operators, you mean everything from salvagers to small sawmills?
Yeah, some of them had sawmills, small ones. A lot of them had heavy equipment. And then, I don't remember the date, but then come an edict from the coast that said there'll be only so many large operations in the valley. And all those little fellas, with their machinery and their small sawmills and that, they were dropped. And there was 3 left. Creston sawmills, Windelbox, and Ken down here, Ken Hushcroft. And it was terrible for a while, the cries that went up. But you know, in a year or so, those people found either sale or work for their heavy machinery, like the bulldozers or the tractors and that. And they made out. Some of them subcontracted to the bigger outfits, but all of a sudden there was just the 3. That didn't include salvage postmakers and stuff like that. You know, the real small operating.
But before that, you would have had a lot of timber sales.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Each of these that you would administer?
Mm-hmm. Some of those sales were 3 to 5 years. And it was usually about there was times when we had 3 timber sale auctions a week, every Saturday. And there was other times we didn't have any. I don't know how that would average out, but
how did the timber sale auction work?
No. Some guy would. There was an upset price. You couldn't go below that. That'd be sometimes $2. I'm guessing now, but $2, 3, or 5 for white pine. And people would say, I'll pay a stumpage of $5, and the next guy would say, I'll pay a stumpage of $5.10. And they'd go by increasing just like a regular auction.
Had you decided where to set up the timber sale, or had one of the people who wanted it?
Usually it was an application. One of them wanted it, and then all of a sudden there was competition, and so it had to go to auction. If there was no competition, the pending sale would be advertised in the local papers for so many weeks, possibly 3 or more. And if there was a person could send in a sealed bid if he didn't feel like attending the auction. But if somebody went higher than that sealed bid, that was it. Or if the sealed bid was higher than the upset price, he still had to pay the amount that he bid, or the company, or however.
What was a quota?
The quota came in later. And each of the three companies were assigned a certain allowable cut quota, and they had so much time to cut that off. If they cut it off before the due date, theoretically they couldn't get any more. And some of them didn't cut it all. And finally they got to where the timber in the ranger district was assessed, and it was divided amongst the three logging outfits, and usually it was smaller than the logging outfits wanted. There just isn't the timber left anymore. That just applied to crown timber. The private timber sales could cut as heavy or as light as they wanted. Very few restrictions on the private cutting. No.
Did the quotas come in at the same time as the change from the having many small operators to having the...
years after.
It was after.
Yeah.
But how did you handle this decision locally? You must have...
We let them weep on our shoulders. I mean, there was nothing we could do. There was a lot of queer things happened. Decisions were made that didn't seem... Well, if you go up Summit Creek there now, for years we wouldn't allow a timber sale application in that drainage at all. And now it's just about clear cut or burnt off. I mean, they changed their policy. Of course, we're down on the low end of the totem pole. There's not much we can say or do about it.
Why didn't you allow cutting
with scenic values? The road was going through, Creston Salmo Road, and no road wants to go through a logged off area, clear cut. And that was the idea, but they held off for many years, and all sorts of little decisions were made in Victoria, and I can remember a timber sale application around Boundary Lake, and I arranged for our surrounding no cut area to keep the lake looking respectably like a lake in the woods should look like. But some bright person in Victoria said, "Oh, that's all going to blow down as soon as they start logging." It never has. But somebody that never even saw the lake made that decision.
So did they log right to the water? Or
in places. Yeah, in places.
Is blowdown a problem around here?
In some places it is too, yeah. We get some fantastic winds once in a long while, and the trees go down. Yeah, and not necessarily big trees, but it's almost like a cyclone. It hit just a swath. You can see it going. The trees are all laying in one direction, so it's not a cyclone. It's just heavy funnel of wind there.
What did the Forest Service have to do to set up the timber sales to get them ready for auction? What were the steps?
Oh, the applicant would usually go after a certain species. There's desirables and there's weed types. And cruisers would go out in there and say, those trees are not ready, or only a certain size is ready to cut, and with that we should make them take out some weed trees too. We try to manage the forestry, and they would put in like recommendations for road, recommendations for or against clear cutting or around a stream bed, keep the water cool. See, there's more than one thing enters into a logging sale besides cutting the trees off. You get a stream exposed and it affects the fish. And the game department is upset. And the cruisers would also, in some cases, leave seed trees, and they had to be marked, painted, leave them or marked, take out, all part of the timber sale contract, or would be included in there. Yeah.
Were you worried that these timber sales were concentrated in the best timber?
Yeah, there was, we wanted it in mature timber, and sometimes we wanted to take out the over-mature also. It all come under the head of management. We did what we figured was best for the trees and for the use that it was going to be made of. People are screaming for more allotments, more quota. Mind you, I'm 20 odd years behind time, so I'm not up on the present conditions, but I do notice that they're not happy with the allotments, not big enough, and yet they're shipping logs to Japan, out of the country. This is something to think about too. If they were going to manufacture it themselves, I can imagine them screaming for more timber, but not if they're just shipping it out.
But the applicants who suggested where they wanted the timber sales originally would be looking at the most accessible, most profitable.
Oh yeah, they wanted a patch of timber that they could reach. The road building wouldn't be too high, too excessively costly, and they'd want it of the highest marketable value the trees would bring. Yeah. A lot of them couldn't see all the ground they were covering, and they missed out.
Did you get quite good at estimating timber as you've been cruising?
Yeah.
What?
Not that we used it steadily, but something that was real difficult, where you could only get in there, say, in one day and out again. That was before helicopters. We would very carefully look it all over and then get out, and then worked out pretty accurate. course, we were doubtful. We had to go back again. And sometimes that was a tough trip.
Would you mark out the boundaries of the timber sales?
Yeah. They were painted. We had a paint spray that was non-toxic and different colors. For a reserve strip, we used blue, and for the boundary itself, we'd use red paint, a little pressure gun, and give each tree on the line a shot. Yeah.
Was trespassing a problem?
Yeah, always a problem. Yeah. And after they've cut the paint-marked trees down, put them through a sawmill, it was pretty hard to say, well, there's the line. It was painted. Can't prove it because it's gone. And it was the same with painting the trees to leave. We finally got so that we go from ground level right up, because they cut off a low stump and you couldn't tell whether it had been. Usually the trees to leave were prime trees for seed scattering. Yeah. That's.
When you started with the Forest Service, would clear cutting have been the most common form of harvesting?
No.
What was?
Sustained yield had a lot to do with it. It put in a road, and you would cut to a diameter size and cut only possibly certain species, and leave the kind of what they called a residual stand for 10-15 years, and chances are there was a lot of that would mature and be good. But this clear cutting, I'm against it.
Why?
Well, the practices that I've seen showed that there's a lot of waste in that clear cutting, because the tendency is to cut all the merchantable out and knock the rest down and slash burn it, and then possibly plant. They don't even leave seed trees in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a practice that's condoned, so it doesn't matter whether I like it or not. It's wasteful as far as I'm concerned, and it isn't to the best interest. But that's one man's opinion.
So when you started out, there would have a common timber sale would have had diameter limits.
Yep. Yeah. And species sometimes limits.
Why? How would those work? Would it be because someone was looking for white pine for the mill in Nelson, or
somebody was looking for yellow pine for special lumber, or of course they paid for higher stumpage for the better grades of trees. All trees are good, but some of them are used more than others. There's a queer way of doing it. White pine, I think, was used for the old days when they used to pack butter in 50-pound boxes. No taste. Now it's all plastic and cardboard. And cedar has gone skyrocketing. It never was a high-priced in the early days, a high-priced stumpage, but now it's fantastic. Boat building and special woods. Yeah.
Well, What made the change to clear cutting? Why was that change implemented?
I don't know. Why? I don't know why it was, but I know all of a sudden it was policy. Wherever possible, I think they, again, my own opinion, nothing to back it up, but again, the loggers, I think, found it easier to grab what they could, what they needed, and clear cut lay down the rest. And I think it was their pressure that got away with the separate species or diameter cutting and that. Yeah. But you know, in the early days, they figured that we'd never run out of timber. Now it's run out.
The timber's run out here in this area.
Yeah, they've got everything right up to the skyline practically, and that's a low grade of wood. Now they're taking on jack pine and finding it makes very good lumber, and it's a quick crop, grows up fast, and lovely stuff to work with. I don't know whether you're a carpenter or not. I like the smell of it when it's scaled, and it used to make me hungry about 10 o'clock in the morning. I hit a jack pine and it smelled like apples, and I got hungry.
Well, when did they establish the public sustained yield units and begin trying to calculate what the sustained yield was so that this wouldn't happen?
Yeah, again, I'm guessing, but I think it was in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s.
And as ranger, what was your part in that? What was your role?
Oh boy, I had to go through everything and write a book on it. Practically every asset, from grazing up to fence posts and everything included. Yeah, it was quite a work of art. Then all the rangers had to do it. So,
was this creating a management plan for the Crown Forest?
For sustained yield, yeah. But then they dropped that somehow.
Was there ever talk of a tree farm license here?
Yes.
Could you tell me about that?
We never worked one.
Did
Cranbrook has them.
Mm-hmm. The Arrow.
Nelson has them. Isn't that that American outfit that's got Cultus Creek? Isn't that a tree farm license? Darkwoods? Or is that a German outfit?
That's the German company. But there is a tree farm license in the Arrow Lakes with
we never had one here.
Did people come in looking in the 50s?
Oh yes, yeah. So that was quite an area there, because a lot of the restrictions that you have on a timber sale didn't apply to that privately owned stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who was interested? Do you remember?
Well, they're all Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would they would come into the office and ask for information, maps?
Yeah. We had one outfit there that come from San Francisco and went to look over the Cultus Creek timber license up there. And they phoned from Spokane to find out if travel was possible in the Kootenay district. They didn't know that we had roads, we had cars, we had choppers and everything else. They thought we were living hillbilly style, very primitive.
Well, when did you go for your first helicopter ride?
Gotta think. Oh, that'd be in around late 1950s.
What did you think of that?
It's the only way to go. I liked it. The only time I got nervous was in Bayonne Creek, and we were hovering to go down into a heliport that had been cut. And I happened to look down, and there was a tall old dead-topped snag, sharp as a needle. I was settling right on top of it practically, and kind of got all puckered up. He backed up a bit and came down all right. We hit a branch on the way down, though, and I thought we were going to walk out. But I just love the helicopter.
What was the difference that it made for you?
How do you mean here?
Yeah.
Oh, we cut heliports all over the area west of Arrow Creek, our watershed. They called it Macaroni Basin. It's got a proper name for that. It's a branch of the Goat River. And we put heliports just about everywhere we thought we'd need one. And that is nice for a fast attack on a fire. That was good timber up there. But not anymore. It's clear cut. It's horrible to fly over from here to the coast, I'll tell you. But we used the helicopters on fires. They used that bucket, drop her down, get her full of water, and then douse the fire with it. Well, it made quite a bit of difference knowing that we had one on there for a quick recce to find out where the smoke was and that way. If there was a smoke, it saved an awful lot of time and timber.
There was a period of time before the helicopters came in where you used aircraft.
That's right. Float job.
Mm-hmm.
And that was quite a thrill to go looking for a fire in that thing, and knowing that all you could do is pick out an area with lots of nice young jack pine in it to put those floats on if you had to land. Oh, that was a monster, that thing.
Was that the Beaver?
Yeah. I got my fingerprints all over the bottom of that seat. You come over a ridge and whew, down you go, the downdraft.
But did you use that for dropping supplies to?
Yeah. I've pushed them out. The pilot says now, put her through the trap door. You remember first to tie yourself to something solid in a plane, though. We let a carton of bread go free fall one time, and the package opened on the way down. The wind got at it, and the bread all went out. And when it hit the moss, it flattened right out just like a slice of bread, but it didn't shatter or anything. It was just compacted. So, bully beef did the same, only the cracks in the beef extruded a long curly, like a wood shaving. They didn't fall from so high. And this was up in Prince George, up around Perth Lake. We dropped a bundle of 6 lady shovels down, and they landed point first. Then they leapfrogged right through the pickup area, and there was men scattering. Of course, we had to laugh. Well, it wouldn't have been funny if we'd had to haul one out. And then a sack of potatoes broke open, and that went down like buckshot, and we could follow that.
Was all that up in Prince George, or did you do that here too?
We did that here too.
Yeah.
Those pilots were good though. There's one fella come in from Kamloops, and in a creek, a branch off the Goat River, and what we were aiming at, we found out afterwards, not just a tarp, it was a cook shack with all the grub in it. And the pilot would holler now, and I'd push her out the hole. We hit that thing plumb center, pretty near killed the cook, and he made a figure eight in that narrow canyon there. He'd go up and just figure eights. He didn't make a circle, go up and then hit her from. Usually they went upstream and dropped it. Not that guy. I'll swear there was tamarack branches on his wingtips when he got back. He was from Kamloops. Then there was one drop they made in Teepee Creek, and that case of eggs went down, caught in a tree, and swung about a foot off the ground. Never broke an egg. No, sir, never broke an egg. But the cook jumped out of the road of it and broke his leg. Yeah, we hauled him out. Oh, there's some weird things have happened in the Forest Service. That was 15,000 acres. Oof. That's a lot of trees.
One fire.
One fire.
Where was that? Goat River?
No. Tree Creek, I think it was. South of the Moyer Lookout in that country. I think it was 10 days before we got a bulldozer in there. And then that wasn't enough. We had to have more. Now, what have we missed? I guess I've rambled all over here.
Well, it's just fine. There's lots of interesting things that you've told me.
I'll venture to say my pal Robinson did a lot better. His memory is right up.
Bob.
Hey, Bob, yeah.
Did you see him the other day? Did he come over for Jim McDonald's?
No. Herb did.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the boys that Jim trained were here.
Would you see much of Herb during the fire season? Would he come out and supervise?
Herb?
Or
Herb would get around. He was quite active, him and his camera. But he didn't. No, he wasn't. He was more of an office man than he was a field man.
What was the most, or what was one of the most dangerous fires you were ever on around Creston? Was there ever a time when you...
Oh yeah. There was one fire in the little Moyer country that I and another person were taking grub into a fire crew, and I had about 40 pounds of sandwiches on my back, and the other fellow had the coffee, the cooking equipment and that, and we were following Jim McDonald, and we heard somebody holler, and Jim says, "Yeah, they're down there." We knew that. All of a sudden, that was Art Hurry, an assistant ranger, and he was hollering to pull the crew back. And Then the fire went over our heads, just like that. And
Crowning.
Crowning, yeah. Oh, it was a horrible noise it made. And I was in another one like that with Jim McDonald, following him again. That's when I was an assistant ranger. It was like 10,000 freight trains, all hitting you, the vibration hitting you right in the belly. And it was hard to breathe in there. There wasn't too much oxygen down below. No sparks or anything falling. And a queer color, because I think the sun was shining through the smoke. And then before we got to the outer edge, why, the sparks were coming down, and she was dropping to the ground, and the ground was picking up then. But it was a most weird situation. Maybe it wasn't dangerous, I don't know, but it sure scared me.
Heat?
No, cool. All the air was coming in. We were right under the center of it.
So you couldn't breathe?
There seemed to be a lack of oxygen. Maybe it was maybe I was using up more than normal. Yeah. But I gotta hand it to Jim. He'd lead you into a place like that. You know, if you broke a leg, he'd stay with you. If he had to burn up himself, he wouldn't leave you. That was the thing he seemed to make a person feel. Yeah.
Was it hard to find a good lookout person to go up in the lookouts?
Yeah, we had a couple of people that we had one that would report every truck that went through and raised a cloud of dust. You know, kind of unsettling. But we were lucky here. First we had old Charlie Pipe, and he lasted many years. Then we had a dud, and then we got Cameron MacDonald. He lasted quite a few years. And then the lookouts, more or less, the demand wasn't on for a lookout man too much.
Why?
Aircraft take it over. Yeah.
The aircraft flew out of Castlegar to come here?
Some of them from Castlegar, and I think that was later, before it was Cranbrook. Yeah.
In the height of fire season, how would you arrange the aircraft patrols? How were they decided?
We didn't. They followed a set pattern, and it covered most of the drainages. And as the timber danger went up, why they'd increase the patrols.
Could you request
more often
if there had been a storm in a particular area?
Yeah, we'd mark that out for them before the patrol left. You know,
in the morning.
We'd give the weather in the morning and pass that stuff along first thing. Mm-hmm. And we knew where they were going to patrol. And yeah. Oh, she was grim in a real fire season. Little cloud sat over, pardon me, little cloud sat over Creston Mountain. I sat down to dinner and the cloud started to spark. And in 20 minutes, we wound up with 31 fires from that 20-minute session. I don't know how many went down in the States, but we got 9 the first day. That was at 1 o'clock, and people started to scatter right now. And we got 9 put out, absolutely out. We had 17 out and under control, a total, that is, of 17 by the next day. And the third day we had 30. That's fine, we had them all corralled, except one. And that blew up on the morning of the 4th, and that took out most of the timber on the Summit Creek Road and Char Creek. It spread all over. Yeah. I'd got trapped in the office, and some of the boys were hurt, sick. I got stuck in there writing checks, and that's about where I wound up. But the hours were fantastic. I was even eating down there. And finally, on the 4th day, when that last one blew up, we got things organized, and then I started to get the shakes, and first thing I knew, they had me home and feeding me tranquilizers.
So you've been working for 4 days straight?
Yeah, well, not straight. I got an hour or two every once in a while, but you write a check and problems show up. You just can't leave. You can't get out. And it just builds up. Yeah, they fed me these tranquilizers. That was funny, you know. It's the first I'd ever had. And you know, by about 4 o'clock I woke up, and I didn't give a darn if the whole damn forest burned up. Still tranquilized. Oh. I was lucky. I had my son there. He says, "Come on, Dad, you're out of this." And that was that. I had some great staff. That didn't worry me. And boy, did they work. I found out what they could do after that, after I got back, and they were all good. Yeah.
Some of the forest rangers I've spoken with have talked about the difficulty of policing the forest industry, and that there was always a tension in their job between helping the industry so that there would be jobs and work for people, and making sure that they followed the rules. Did you find that too?
Yeah, it was just about almost enmity. You come around there and they figured you were looking for trouble. They had that attitude. Not whether you were just looking to see whether they had their fire tools or whether they were following the rules of the timber sale contract. But they had a chip on their shoulder all the time. And like I say, there's one, you asked him to do something, and there's no argument. He just grinned and says, "That's the way it'll be," and it was. And others would fight you all the time. I've seen, I put a health clause in one timber sale, and everybody knew it. I made them put toilets in. Didn't do much good because they went up the stream and followed their logging up there and left the toilet 4 miles down below.
Were they in someone's water?
Yeah. And that's why the health regulations.
And did you shut them down? Did you or do something to?
I did, yeah. I shut them down and Didn't do much good. They even dumped changed oil in their damn bulldozers and their cats right on the road where it could run down into the creek. Of course, most of them didn't live where they drank that water. They were always, most of them were always figuring ways to get around the regulations.
Did you have adequate authority?
Sure. I shut them down, made a few enemies doing it, but they managed to weasel around it.
By going over your head?
Yeah. Yeah. But a person has to do these things. You either shut them down in some cases or recommend they be shut down. Otherwise, the head office doesn't know whether you've done your job or what.
So the district forester was not always behind you?
The district forester usually was, but he didn't handle everything. Sometimes he was away. Lots of times they had friends in high places. There's loggers, and but if I didn't report them or shut them down, I'd be on the map. Besides, I hated to see one outfit get away with something that the rest are being concerned with, living up to. Oh, yeah.